Hello everyone and welcome to the Melbourne Traditionalists podcast, episode 16. I'm Mark Moncrief from the Melbourne Traditionalists and I have with me David Hiscock from XYZ. How are you, David?
Very good, Mark. Thanks for having me. I feel a little dirty having given money to Globo Homo, but that's the price we pay for going to watch The Joker, huh?
Yeah, we did. We went to see it together with a friend of ours and, pardon me, afterwards I thought, I spent a lot more money than I planned to.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But the worst part of the night was the 40-minute traffic jam that we were in. Fortunately, you weren't there, but the other two of us were, just outside Crown.
How's the diversity, huh?
You get to see a lot of diversity.
Yeah. But, think of the food. The food. It's the price we pay for having great food, Mark.
Well, that's true. We ate at the food court, and I had a roast, and served to me, of course, by Asians. Their traditional food.
Yeah, well, Crown is traditionally Asian, so it's just it's great to see so many new Australians.
Actually, I was surprised by how many
boosting the economy.
How many Aussies there were there.
Oh right.
Yeah, because I expect the diversity, but I was actually surprised that there were some points where I was like, oh, everyone's white.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, all right, they're not.
Well, it is Melbourne Cup weekend, so maybe.
Well, you might be right there. Maybe that's all it is. Yeah. Now, as you said, we went and saw Joker.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about Joker this episode, and I'm going to let you go first.
Sure.
Because we were talking off air about who will be more controversial. So
we're going to try to
here it goes, because we haven't talked about it.
But we'll try to keep one-upping each other. We'll wait till you hear what I have to say about the midget, but we'll get to that in a bit. So my interest in this was in seeing whether this was a right-wing film or a left-wing film, because
it's been portrayed as a right-wing film.
Yes, it's definitely been portrayed as a right-wing film. The media have been pumping it beforehand. Before the movie came out, they were pumping out propaganda about how it's going to encourage incels to kill people.
Yeah.
And then that never happened, and they sort of just pigeonholed that. No, they memory hold that little idea.
Yeah.
And then certain segments on the far right have co-opted the imagery of the Joker and are now using it.
And in fact, Jokers are appearing all over the world, in Lebanon, in Chile, or in all these kinds of protests.
Yes. Yeah, you could, as in people wearing Joker
They're
masks.
dressing up as the Joker.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, with the face paint, the whole bit.
It doesn't surprise me that they're doing it in Chile. And I'll talk about that when I get into my analysis. And so then there have been a few other people on the far right who have pointed out, look, this is not a right-wing movie.
Yep.
Black Pilled especially did a review where he pointed out that they basically cut together three movies. They cut together Taxi Driver, I can't even remember the other. They basically sort of took scenes from a few other movies to make this one. And David Hilton on the XYZ has pointed out it's basically trying to start a revolution against everything. And having seen it now, I've got to agree with Black Pilled and David Hilton. I thought that the movie was thoroughly Marxist in its analysis. It portrayed the bad guys as being the greedy capitalists.
Yep.
And it portrayed the solution as the working class rising up against them. It portrayed Arthur Dent. Is it Arthur Dent?
Arthur Fleck.
Fleck. Who's Dent?
Dent is the district attorney.
Oh God.
He wasn't in the movie.
Yeah, right.
But he was in the Dark Knight series.
He's the Two-Face, isn't he?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
okay.
He becomes Two-Face.
He Fleck is portrayed like walking through a dying city or a decaying city with plenty of degeneracy, plenty of diversity. The diversity is never questioned.
Yeah.
In fact, it's lauded. Like, it's like he's always dealing with authority figures who are black.
Yes.
And he pines after this empowered, brave, stunning black single mother and he's quite happy to be a race cuck for her. And it's so like there's no
spoilers, by the way.
Yes. There's no concept of race realism in there whatsoever. So you can't take that angle. Also, in the like basically the first sort of scene of the movie, he's beaten up by a diversity gang.
They're not very diverse. They're all Hispanic.
Yeah, so maybe they must be white Hispanics. But you know, when he starts taking his revenge, he doesn't take his revenge on the diversity gang.
No, and in fact, he doesn't refer to them as Hispanic or Puerto Rican.
He refers to them as kids.
As kids.
And
everyone
youths.
Everyone else refers to them as youths.
Yes. Yeah. So the first people that he kills are white rich guys in suits, and it's like every.
To be fair, were pricks and did attack him.
Yes,
he was actually justified in killing them.
But that's what the movie makes you think. Like that's always the point of all of this. Okay, yes, he was justified in doing it because that's how the movie.
As the movie portrayed it, he was justified.
Yes,
but we'll come back to that.
Okay, and so again, there's the Marxist analysis. It's the rich guys. It's the Wall Street guys. They're the guys who have made the city the way it is.
Yep.
And he's taking his revenge on them. And so one of the reasons why the mainstream media have freaked out a little bit about Joker is that there's a scene where, again, spoilers, he kills his mother.
Yep.
And the killing of his mother is given justification in the movie again, because it turns out that she was actually quite neglectful, and she had mental issues, and she let her boyfriends abuse him horribly, which is the reason why he's insane.
Yeah.
But again, every murder that he commits in the movie has a point, and it's symbolic. And this might be a bit of a stretch. This is the furthest I go and stretch in my analysis. You could make the analysis that in murdering his mother, he kills his own heritage. Mm-hmm. So again, zero race realism whatsoever. In fact, it just reinforces the Marxist analysis that it's all about class. Race does not exist. Kill your heritage. That means nothing to you.
I would agree that there is no racial consciousness at all. And you know, people, the diversity is just random.
Yes.
So you know, there's no specific point to it, or they don't have any loyalty either to anyone or to themselves.
It felt like I was watching.
And you're quite right that it's all about class.
Yes. It felt like I was watching an ad in the current year. Like it's like they it's like the memo had gone out. It's like the memo had gone out, and they were like, okay, make sure there's equal number of men and women in positions of authorities all the way down the ladder. Make sure like you've got a black and a Hispanic and maybe a Muslim here and there. Just make sure that like it's deliberately even. It's just, apart from when people get killed, because it's all white guys in the movie who get killed.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Yes.
It has been suggested that one of the guys that kills the guy who gives him the gun and then lies about it and gets him fired, that represents as something else, but I'll leave that out. But I found that scene where he kills the guy in his apartment with the scissors.
Yes.
It's
so in the movie it's portrayed that this guy set him up.
Yes.
And then they find out that his mother dies, and he comes to comfort him basically, and he brings another guy who's a midget.
Yes.
So the two of them arrive at Arthur Fleck's house, and then Arthur Fleck murders.
Yes. Yeah, because it's quite clear that this guy who gave him the gun and set him up is he's not there to try to give him sympathy. He's actually there to put pressure on him to sort of keep quiet or do something to get him out of trouble. So instead, Arthur Fleck just kills him.
Yep.
It's actually a brilliant scene. It's Arthur subverting what all the people who are controlling him expect him to do. Mm-hmm. And so in that perspective, it is actually like, I'd say the second most important scene in the movie. But here's the thing. He doesn't kill the midget.
That's correct. He doesn't kill the midget.
Yeah. If I write a review of this and clog up the right-wing blogosphere with another review, it'll be called "The Joker Should Have Killed the Midget."
All right.
And the reason I say that is because they actually drag it out. Like after he's killed the guy, the midget's hiding. You're like, what's he going to do? Is he going to kill the midget? Like all through the movie, we've been made to associate ourselves with Fleck. And just for that moment, we're associating ourselves with the midget, because the midget, he's been the butt of jokes as well.
Yes.
Mind you, did you notice I was the only person in the entire theatre who laughed
there was
when they made the midget joke?
There was one other person who laughed.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I condemned you both.
Because we're not supposed to laugh at that. You notice that? Again, this is the movie setting up a designated victim and us associating with the victim. And so here we have both victims. And so they draw the scene out. He asks Fleck if he's going to let him go. Fleck's like, yeah, you can go. You know, he has to walk past Fleck, close to him to get past, and he can't reach. Then he can't reach the latch. He can't reach the latch. Can't get out. He has to ask Arthur to open the door for him. Arthur opens the door a little bit, then he closes it, says something, opens it up. He finally goes. He should have killed the midget. If he'd killed the midget, it would have been a rejection of every SJW designated victim group, marginalised person, SJW card deck that we've been socialised to agree with.
Yep.
Instead, he let him go. Instead, he reinforced this idea of this Marxist class analysis. In letting the midget go, it makes his killing Marxist, and he is now on the side of the midget and all of the other oppressed peoples against the oppressors. And so that's why I argue that you can't say that this is a right-wing movie. To me, it's thoroughly Marxist. At best, you can say that we have co-opted something which has been presented as a Marxist idea. Like, I think Globo Homo understands that, yes, our civilization is decaying, and they're trying to channel people into being Antifa, essentially.
Yeah.
And so you could say, well, we've cleverly co-opted that for our own, but you could say that maybe we've been manipulated into thinking that we're co-opting it, but when really they wanted us to take it on all along, because even in the scene where he kills the talk show host guy at the end, like, he's in full makeup, his voice is quite high-pitched. It came across to me, and this has been said by Black Pilled by Devon Stack as well. It came across to me like he was a tranny.
Yep.
And I'm like, why would you want to associate with that? So there are a few people who disagree.
Sorry, which killing was that?
When at the end where he says you get what you effing deserve, and he shoots you on the head. Yeah. To me, that was basically portraying the Joker as transsexual, and again, killing him on behalf of everybody in his class rather than a white guy standing up to Globo Homo. So I'm like, in my perspective, we shouldn't associate with the movie. We shouldn't try to co-opt. Like, Ryan Fletcher disagrees with me on this, and I respect his opinion, and he makes good points. But my opinion, I'm just like, I actually didn't like the movie. I didn't think it was that imaginative. Mind you, I'd seen all the spoilers, so I can't say that it was predictable when I kind of knew what was going to happen anyway. Yeah, that's my take.
Well, I must say that's very interesting, and I had not picked up the class aspect as much as you had, but when you mention it, I'm like, yeah, I actually agree with that.
Okay.
Now, my analysis is quite different, and I guess it's more a movie analysis than a political analysis.
Yes.
So the first thing I'd like to note is that this movie has been phenomenally successful. It's going to be the first R-rated movie to get more than $1 billion.
Wow.
At the cinema.
Somebody mentioned actually, Joker kills 6 people, R-rated. Thanos kills half of the population of the entire universe, PG.
Although I will point out that that in Joker, all those 6 murders are shown graphically, whereas in...
Yes. Yes.
The other thing that is interesting about Joker is that on IMDb, it has a rating of 8.8 out of 10.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's way too high.
Yeah, right.
I would not rate it 8.8 at all.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I was thinking as I was watching it. I thought it's actually quite slow. It's a lot slower than I expected. It's also a lot sadder than I expected.
Yeah.
And I thought if this was called something else, not called Joker, and they kept 95% of the movie exactly as it is and took away the 5% that actually references the Batman mythos, Gotham City, we could watch this entire movie and just assume it's set in New York in the 1970s. Because that's really the feel of it. And I wonder whether people would be raving about it in the same way.
Yeah.
Because really the movie is about a man who is mentally ill and starts off obviously mentally ill, life goes bad, and he goes insane.
Yes.
And what they've said is, oh, this is the rise of a supervillain. No, this is a really tragic story of a man who's just had a hard life, and it gets harder. So that superhero element, even supervillain element, that was absent. But as I was watching the movie, I began to think of another movie, American Psycho. Now, in American Psycho, which is a very good movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it. Again, it's quite violent, but it certainly is appropriate for the movie. But really, there's 2 ways of defining psycho. One is someone who does grotesque things like, skins people alive. But actually, you're still a psychopath if you think about skinning people alive. You don't have to do it. It's thinking about it is also abnormal. But in American Psycho, you start off accepting, hey, all of this is happening. And then there comes a point where you start to think, hold on, is this really happening? Did that scene really happen? How much of this is not happening? How much of this is complete fantasy? I mean, psychotic fantasy, but still fantasy. And that's what I started thinking more and more as I watched the movie. More and more I started to see, hey, this scene doesn't make sense. The scene you were talking about where the midget gets away. The midget just watched a friend of his get viciously murdered. How come? Why didn't that have consequences? Now, in a later scene, only a few scenes later, we see him all dressed up and he's going to the film studio, the TV studio, and the police try to arrest him, and there's a big kerfuffle. Why are there 2 police officers if they think he's committed murder? Obviously, they don't think he's committed murder. Well, they think he's committed the subway murders. They're suspicious, but they're not certain. Now, there's an article on Cinema Blend called "Why Joker Cut a Scene That Would Have Cleared Up a Character Mystery." Now, one thing that is absolutely clear is that there's a black girl who Arthur Fleck has a romantic relationship with, and then it becomes clear that it's all in his head. There is no romantic relationship. She knows his name. That's the extent of their relationship. And there are some people who watch the movie and it's not clear what happens to her. And some people have said, oh, he murdered her. But they've actually come out and said, no, he did not. But this is what is in this article. The director has remained vague about how many of the events in Joker actually happened and how much was in Arthur's mind. This is my contention, that practically all of the movie is his fantasy. And And if you go and watch the movie, that this is 90% in Arthur Fleck's mind, it actually all makes sense. How can he get away with all of this stuff?
Yes.
Because it's not actually happening.
Yes.
And right at the end of the movie, well, not just before the end, he's been arrested by the police. He's in the back of a police car. There's riots taking place and everyone's dressed up as clowns. And some clowns are in an ambulance and they crash into the police car and the police are killed or knocked out, and he's picked up very gently and taken out of the car, and he's placed on the bonnet of the police car, and he comes to, and then he realizes that the crowd's there, and he gets up on the bonnet and he starts doing those weird dance moves that he does throughout the movie, and they're actually quite weird.
They're extremely weird. And again, they're very effeminate too.
And very effeminate. And the crowd cheer. That's a fantasy moment. That's how we imagine life to be.
He finally gets his applause.
He finally gets his applause. Yeah. And why is it that everyone's dressed up as a clown? There's absolutely no reason for this. Now, in the movie, they say, these murders took place and people have said, it was done by a clown, so that's why everyone's dressed as a clown. It's a pretty flimsy excuse. It makes perfect sense when it's all in his head.
Yes. Yeah. I'll pay that.
Right at the end.
Yeah.
Right at the end, he's supposed to become the Joker. Not Joker, the Joker. All right? Because the character is the Joker. The movie's called Joker. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think that's semantics. I think that's very important. Because the Joker is a super villain. And he does things like bank hoists. He sets traps for Batman. He kidnaps the commissioner's daughter. Right? This Arthur Fleck is not capable of any of those things. He is not a supervillain. Even if you accept that everything in the movie actually happened, he is a psychopath. He's murderous. He is capable of generating chaos. But he is absolutely not capable of planning. There is absolutely no evidence that he plans anything. Everything just happens, just like in fantasy.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you raised that. That's a point that I didn't. But yeah, this does not seem like the genius that Heath Ledger portrayed the last time we saw the Joker.
Exactly. In Heath Ledger's Joker, he is a genius.
Yeah. With this Joker, everything just kind of falls into place. Like the revolutionary movement starts up without him even trying, and it just happens. He doesn't have any agency in that.
Absolutely. He has no agency. You're absolutely correct.
And another scene that doesn't make sense is the other most important scene in the movie, the scene where he says you get what you effing deserve and shoots the guy in the head.
Yes.
He admits that he's the guy who killed the people on the subway. Yet, rather than calling the police straight away, rather than all the security who are in the building grabbing him immediately, they let him he argues with him for another few minutes.
That's right, yeah.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Exactly.
The most important scene in the movie makes no sense.
And in fact, the first time that we see that character, that the Robert De Niro's character, Arthur Fleck is at home. He's sitting on the bed with his mother, and the show comes on, and he's watching it. And then all of a sudden, he's in this studio audience.
That's clearly fantasy.
And that is absolutely clearly fantasy. And what does he fantasize? He fantasizes that he says something, the host calls him down, and everyone claps at everything he says. And what he says isn't that clever. It's not that funny.
Yeah.
It's not that endearing, but everyone claps, everyone loves it. And then the host hugs him and says, I'd give up all of this to have a son like you. And then it snaps back to reality. Yeah. Right? So it's obviously a fantasy scene. Yeah. And you get a few of those that are absolutely fantasy in the movie. But I suggest that probably 90% of it is fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting take, and I reckon that's a really strong case for that. One other scene I thought of. There's another point I'll make, but the scene where he goes to the mansion, the Wayne mansion.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Bruce Wayne is a kid, and he
puts his fingers in his mouth and makes him smile.
Yes, the Joker puts his fingers in young Bruce Wayne's mouth and makes young Bruce Wayne smile. That every now and then I'll be in a movie theatre and I'll sort of look around at the audience and go, "Are we really watching this?" I'm like, they're portraying Joker as the victim here, because then the security guard comes along and doesn't understand that he's just a nice guy who doesn't mean any harm. I'm like, no, he's a freak. Get your hands off that kid.
Yeah. Don't
normalise that sort of stuff. Don't make us sympathise with somebody who does that. And there's a scene a little bit later on where what's Bruce Wayne's father again?
Let's just call him Mr. Wayne.
This is terrible. At least you can tell I'm not a bloody fanboy. He punches Joker and he says, "You touch my kid again, I'll kill you."
Yeah.
And again, we're supposed to sympathise with Joker. I was like,
Mr. Wayne is portrayed in a way that I've never seen him portrayed before.
But
he's a complete prick.
At that point, I'm like, this guy's a legend. And actually this... And because that's exactly what I would have done. I thought Fleck got off lightly. And again, this backs up your analysis that it's a fantasy, because maybe that scene did actually happen. Where he gets punched in the face.
Because I'm not saying 100% is fantasy. I think some of the scenes are absolutely real.
But what we're seeing
normally the parts where things go bad.
Yes, but what we're seeing in that scene is the Joker reinterpreting that scene to make him be the victim. He's like, "I want to be your son. Instead, you punch me in the face and tell me that if I touch your son again, you'll kill me." It's like, no. This guy knows that you're a freak. You touched his son. He tells you to stay the hell away from him. I just found that amazing, and it's just something that has to be said, because I thought that scene was disgusting. It was.
And this is from that same article that I read from before, Cinema Blend. What's more, Todd Phillips, who's the director, recently told IndieWire that he originally planned for a scene that would make Sophie's fate clear. So Sophie's the black woman that he has the romantic interest in. The Joker script contained a cutaway scene during Murray Franklin, that's the Robert De Niro character, Murray Franklin's interview with Arthur, that showed Sophie watching the violent encounter unfold on her television. But according to Todd Phillips, the scene ultimately wouldn't have made sense for the overall narrative, because Joker is meant to be told entirely from Arthur's perspective.
Right.
And actually, when you watch it, it's every scene is his perspective.
Almost every scene. Yeah. Right. Yeah, there you go. So again, it's his take on everything.
It's his take on everything.
Take.
Yeah.
So this is the important thing. Overall, aside from whether we've co-opted it or whether we've been tricked into co-opting it. The Hollywood and the media establishment, this happens in books too, they are systematically deconstructing all of our heroes. So whether they're real or fiction or a combination of both, they're all getting, they're made to be not the good guys anymore, or they're getting blacked. So if
and there's the thing is that there's no authentic black heroes.
Oh no, there aren't.
Instead they're being taken from us and made black.
Yes.
And that's the objection that I have to the whole thing. And of course, the same is happening with women. Instead of them creating female characters, they're saying, "Oh, Captain Marvel, used to be a man, no more."
Yeah. Well, our actual tradition is littered with real men and real women who have fulfilled stereotypical roles, and they've been the people that we look up to for years and years and years. Whether it's King Arthur, whether it's Hercules, whether it's fictional characters like Luke Skywalker, who was just destroyed in the last movie. Like his entire persona was just turned upside down.
Yeah.
And this is important because, like, whether it's real or whether they're actual historical figures, the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell about ourselves, that's how we understand ourselves. And so it's important to understand that, again, something like Star Wars that was all along, that was meant to sort of push a kind of multicultural line on us.
Mm-hmm.
The superhero movie, the narrative of like this ordinary guy who's fulfilling this big destiny, that's very Secret King, that's kind of associated with a certain class of people, and it's elevating the nerdy guy and getting rid of the strong heroic white man. So this is all meant to deconstruct us. But now that demographic shift is so far along, there's no need for these heroes anymore. So they're one by one, they're just chopping them off and they're just giving them to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And even the villains as well. They're deconstructing the villains as well. That they're no longer the supervillain. It's no longer the good versus evil. It's just some crazy guy who imagined the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, David. I think this has been a very interesting episode. Where can people find more of your thoughts?
Come to XYZ, www.xyz.net.au. You can follow us on Gab and on Telegram, and I crap on a lot with Maddie's Modern Life on XYZ Live on Monday nights, and with the Unshackled guys on Thursday nights on the Uncockables. So come check us out.
And I'm Mark Moncrief, and you can find out more of my thinking at Upon Hope. Just type that into your favourite search engine and you'll find me. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.